I'll be damned.
I am here to take a look inside myself, recognize that I could be the eye of the storm. I am not my body, not my mind, or my brain. Not my thoughts and feelings, I am not my DNA. I am the observer, I'm the witness of life. I live in the space between the stars and the sky.
And I got left alone with my brain for a little too long. Uh-oh! Uh-oh!
Good Lord. Yeah, let's talk about this. I have such a weird relationship with gift giving and gift receiving. For an undiscovered neurodivergent people pleaser living in and out of poverty, this time of year has always been really fucking rough and stressful and like panic inducing. Plus, my birthday is on Christmas Eve, and I grew up in a house that hated Christmas, so there's a lot of trauma there. If someone gives me an unexpected gift, like outside of Christmas, outside of my birthday, I feel so guilty that I didn't get them anything. And like it's my first instinct to apologize for not getting them anything, instead of realizing that I'm living in this moment and need to process this moment. My brain is miles ahead in a grief and shame spiral. And processing all of this is really confusing and really contradictory and just hard. I grew up with passive-aggressive people. I'm also autistic. So when I ask someone, hey, what would you like for Christmas this year? And they go, oh, nothing, don't worry about it. And they tell me that more than once, I take them at their word. I say to myself, okay, I won't get them anything because they don't want anything. And then when Christmas would come and they didn't have anything to open from me, they would get so pouty and upset. Like I feel like they were testing me and I failed the test just because I took them literally when they said they didn't want anything. What they really meant was read between the lines and figure it the fuck out. That's a lot to put on a kid. A lot. So with all of that in mind, processing my own emotions when I receive gifts is something that I've had to practice over the years so that I had an acceptable response, so I wouldn't hurt my relatives' feelings. I can tell them that I'm so grateful and thankful and appreciative until I am blue in the face, but if I don't show it on my face with excitement and wonder, they will be upset with me. It's exhausting. It's exhausting to live like that. To be nervous to open gifts around people because your real reaction is not what they want you to do. Then to me, the question becomes, why did you get me the gift? Was it to make yourself feel good? Are you expecting me to bawl my eyes out? I've never understood. Even this year when PJ gave me my birthday gifts, I had to stop apologizing to him for not being outwardly excited. He's neurodivergent too. He doesn't give a shit. But internally, I feel so warm and loved and appreciated and thought of. But that doesn't always translate externally. Being comfortable with myself and living with someone who appreciates me for being my true self is so healing. I'm very grateful to have my own place and my own space so that I can process this shit. But yeah, it's hard. I'm so glad you asked. The only experience I'm speaking from here is my own. This is a different process for every person who goes through something like this. But for me, all my life I've been praised for my abilities while being simultaneously punished for traits that were ultimately out of my control. Looking back, there were obviously traits of my autism and my AuDHD, but people around me made me feel like they were personal failings. If I wasn't achieving something academically, athletically, artistically, or otherwise, then I was being punished, shunned, ostracized, bullied. And that juxtaposition alone is maddening. Then pair that with living in a passive-aggressive, abusive household and moving on to date multiply abusive people. I was just told that everything that happened to me was my fault. And internally, I was fighting for my fucking life every single day. Being able to learn information quickly, but not being able to retain it when the time came. Being able to understand and comprehend how something is supposed to be done, but being unable to execute it myself. Before I knew that it was AuDHD, I had sort of finagled my daily life into something that was remotely feasible for me to survive. Like with my time blindness, I combated that by being hours early or like 30 minutes late everywhere I went. As far as all my jobs go, once that novelty dopamine wore off, I could not survive. I could not function in a normal, neurotypical work environment. And I was so ashamed for having these problems because to everyone my whole life, I was the smart one, the artsy one, this, that, and the third. But when it came to application, execution, functionality, I just couldn't. These past couple of years, I have spent unwinding and undoing and unlearning decades of grief and shame around my identity and my existence. And when I came to this realization that I was AuDHD, I had to relive my entire existence through that new lens, and suddenly everything made fucking sense. Everything made fucking sense. Enter rage. The reasons for my mistreatment, bullying, and abuse were ultimately due to my autistic traits. And that is so fucked up. Cycling through this grief and rage, grief for the life that I lived thinking that I was just a fucking failure, grief for my childhood, grief for my own misperceptions of myself. It's a fucking lot, okay? 3 things that have been keeping me sane lately are my cats, my cannabis, and my CPTSD therapy. It's a process. I've been meaning to talk about this for a while now, specifically when people say everybody does that when an autistic person is discussing their autistic traits. People who aren't autistic and don't understand what it means to be autistic are fucking shocked when they hear that they have a thing in common with an autistic person, as if autistic people aren't human beings with lives just as complex as anyone else's. Do I feel like I'm on the wrong planet? Yeah, I do, but I'm still a human being. Specifically want to talk about not like internal thought processes as much because that's a whole other spiel for another time. I want to talk about specific instances that occur in daily life, and I'll show one of my tweets as an example. Every time one of my tweets pops off on Twitter and reaches the allistic and neurotypical community, I get absolutely fucking flamed, and this is no exception. The autistic experience of holding your breath whenever you clean up a mess, take out the trash, or walk by something stinky because of your severe aversion to bad smells. Now, I am well aware that bad smells are bad for most people. In no way is that tweet saying, if you think trash stinky, then must be autistic. And I feel like a lot of people who came for me in that tweet specifically just skimmed over the words severe aversion. And I just want to take a second to explain what that actually fucking means for me personally. So picture this. You're an average allistic person and you have to take out the trash. You breathe normally, just like you normally do. And you don't think about your breath normally at all. So you're breathing, right? And you go up to take out the trash, and then you catch a whiff of something that was in the trash for way too long, and you go, ooh, that stinks. And then you don't think another thing of it, and you take out the trash. Now, if something is especially putrid, then I would expect an average allistic person to maybe have some form of physical reaction, like gagging or, running away even, just something to that effect. But the smell has to be extreme, right? For me, any bad smell gives me a visceral, physical, violent reaction. So if I'm taking out the trash, for example, as I approach it, I am already holding my breath. And I'm not an Olympic swimmer, so I can't hold my breath for very long. So I hold it until I can't stand it while I'm, finagling the bag. And then I do one of these. And then I'm right back to holding my breath. I hold my breath as much as I physically can until I have put the bag in the outside trash can. And I hold my breath when I open that too. Because any bad smell makes me physically sick. Not only that, my brain will store it like a dick and it'll haunt me. So to me, holding my breath and passing out and seeing stars is favorable to the alternative. I have so many examples that I don't have time for.
I am so good at masking. No one would ever realize I was autistic if I didn't say anything.
Look, there she goes, that girl is so peculiar. I wonder if she's feeling well.
With a dreamy, far-off look.
And her nose stuck in a book.
You wanna know what really cheeses my grits? When I'm in the comment section of other autistic creators and I see shit like, you don't seem autistic here, you're making eye contact. Girl, I'm in a room by myself with my phone in my right hand and I'm looking at the fucking camera. Wow. But more often than not, I'm looking down here at myself because that's just how my eyeballs work. But do you really fucking think That's just such a fucking embarrassing take. That's such an embarrassing thing to say. It's also embarrassing that you're not a doctor and that you can't diagnose someone through a 10-second snapshot of anyone's life via the internet. Like, is your name CAT scan? Can you measure brain activity? Can you see what my brain's saying to you right now? Yes, this. A few months into unmasking my autistic traits and learning how to exist in the world as a newly discovered autistic person, I made a promise to myself that I would stop adding gratuitous LOLs, LMAOs, and ha-has to every message that I send for fear of being misinterpreted as rude. But here's the thing about that. Being policed for my tone as an autistic woman is no longer my problem. And as I began to expand on what it means to unmask this portion of myself, I also stopped laughing at things that were not funny. I stopped putting filler laughter in to avoid dead air and awkwardness. But really all I'm doing is holding that person accountable for whatever stupid shit they said by letting them stew in that silence. Doing this has set the foundation for me to be able to trust myself more and my opinions and my beliefs and what I find funny and what I don't find funny. Start small by taking out gratuitous laughter from your texts. It's a game changer.
This place is great, you know? It's whimsical and fun.
What are you looking at, motherfucker?
Put your hand into cold, dirty sink water with little bits floating around.
Immediately B. Immediately the other answer. I don't care what it is. If I had to choose between washing a sink full of dishes and single-handedly sword fighting 500 people in a row, sign me the fuck up. I would rather scrub a dirty toilet on my hands and knees. I would rather eat a spoonful of cat food. I would rather trim my lawn with scissors. Nothing gives me the ick quite like soggy food floaties. And bitch, if they're cold, are you sure? Yeah, I can't fucking talk about this anymore. I'm out.
Shut up, it is not.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is. First and foremost, no shade intended to the person who left this comment. I just get this type of comment so often that I figured now would be a good time to directly address it, even though I've talked about it before in my other videos. And I also get comments that say things like, I'm just going to pretend that I don't relate to all of these, which is funny and fine, but also just a little bit, it sounds like I can't be autistic because that would be the worst thing ever. But that's a whole other video. As for comments like this, who say, wait, isn't this normal? Aren't these normal things that normal people do? There's a lot that's kind of wrong about that way of thinking, and let me break it down. The opposite of autistic is not normal. The opposite of autistic is allistic. An allistic person is a person who is not autistic. Secondly, autistic traits, behaviors, habits are all a part of the human experience. Autistic people are indeed people. We just experience the world differently than allistic people. And autistic traits differ from allistic traits by way of the impact on our life, the detriment that it can have on us, the effect, the severity, the frequency, etc., etc. As an allistic person, it is fine if you have a thing in common or several things in common with an autistic person. And I truly hope that you know that. There is absolutely nothing wrong with being autistic. Never has been, never will be. It's not an illness. It's not a disease. It's not something that's in need of a cure. Also, for me, these things are normal. So the use of the word normal is entirely subjective to begin with. Also, every single autistic person is different. Our traits are different. Autism is a spectrum. So when I make videos like this that demonstrate and illustrate some of my traits, this is not and will never be me saying, if you experience 1, 2, 3, or more of these things, then you must be autistic. That is not at all how it works. My videos are not meant to serve as a diagnostic tool. My videos are for entertainment purposes only. But I will say that something that led to my autistic discovery and my ADHD discovery was the specificity of TikTok's algorithm. If you're getting a whole lot of content from ADHD creators or autistic creators and you find yourself relating to a lot of them, then it might behoove you to do your own research and kind of deep dive into this and see if you might be neurodivergent. Taking the time to explore those things for myself has permanently changed my life for the better. Okay, as always, I can't cover everything I want to say in a 3-minute TikTok, but I think that covers the basics of what I mean to address here. I hope this clears it up, and if anyone has any questions, please leave them below. That there are not more autistic or ADHD people. Simply, we have the education. Not only bingo and bango, but also bongo, because this video is spot on. Please watch the original video because he offers a graph about the frequency of left-handedness over time, and as a lefty, I doubly appreciated that video. The advent of the internet, and social media for that matter, allowed us to take knowledge and community into our own hands instead of just accepting what we were told at face value throughout school. For me personally, it was the specificity of TikTok's algorithm that led me to take it upon myself to discover my own AuDHD. But something important to note, until June 10th, 1993, women in the US were not required to be included in clinical research. Women's healthcare is therefore behind by about 20 or 30 years at least. So being able to meet other autistic people online has literally saved my life. It empowered me to start making accommodations for myself and to forgive myself for a lot of perceived failings. So there's not a sudden uptick. We've always been here.
Dingle bongle, dingle dangle, yickety doo, yickety da, ping pong, lippy tappy too.
Kill me. I have a lot to live for. I have a wife and kids. Shut the fuck.
Ouch. I can't be the only one who spends the entirety of daylight hours powering up my brain only for it to finally come alive around 8:30 or 9 p.m. at night, and then I spend the next several hours riddled with guilt about things I should have gotten done during daylight hours when everyone else gets shit done, but everything's closed and now I have to try again tomorrow, even though I'm not going to fucking do that. So I just watch Drag Race to numb the pain, and then when it's time to finally go to bed around 1 or 2 a.m., I have to manually shut down my brain, Control-Alt-Delete with a sleep aid. Just me. Anyway, the rain did this. I gotta go.
Who the hell's that? Oh my god, no, it's John Wick.
Brother, when I tell you it is a fucking miracle that I'm standing here making this TikTok right now, you should believe me. At least 3 distinct times in my life where I could have made my planetary exit, 2 abduction attempts. I would say I've been tricked, bamboozled, and scammed more than the average person. Robbed twice. And that's just right off the top. It is infuriating to be almost unnecessarily suspicious and yet simultaneously chronically gullible. It's a lifelong motif of mine, and luckily for me, that makes me a magnet for professional Olympic level gaslighters. The fuckery started young and the hits just keep on coming, so y'all want some stories? Put a finger down if your intelligence and opinions growing up used to be valued by the adults around you, mainly because it made them look good. But then when you grew up and began to develop your own worldview and your own opinions about things, all of a sudden you were just a young, dumb kid who didn't know anything. And you want to know what's particularly hilarious about this? The people in my life who had sniffed me out and treated me differently all these years because they could just tell that something was weird about me are the same people who are incredulous to my newly found AuDHD. And I believe that the reason for this is multifaceted. I think part of it is due to their unwillingness to confront their own misconceptions about autism and ADHD. I think it's partly due to their refusal to come to terms with the role they played in my suffering. And I think another part is them not wanting to have a name associated with my weirdness so that they could justify their mistreatment. And, oh my god, why am I ghosting out? So that they could justify their mistreatment of me because it was my fault for being weird, right? Spoiler alert, bitch, that is a title that I wear with pride, okay? I am cringe, but I am free. And if that's too much for you, go find less. Bye! This comment brought up a really great talking point, and first and foremost, thank you to this commenter who reached out and sent me some well wishes. I really appreciate that. And this is not me going off on the commenter or saying that they're wrong or trying to prove them wrong or anything like that. And I've talked about this on Twitter before, but it bears repeating on this platform as well. Depression is often conflated with autistic burnout. And for someone like me who definitely has experienced both distinct conditions, I'd like to explain why, for me personally, burnout and depression are 2 different things. The best way I can describe autistic burnout is being in cooldown mode because I used all my mana. Essentially meaning that all of my energy and spoons that I've been saving up to just do the thing have been used up. and I am now in a recovery period so that I can regain some of that energy back. In autistic burnout, I want to do the thing, but I can't do the thing, and that's really frustrating. And depression was a different experience for me. It involves physical, heavy feelings in my chest and my head. It also involves me going into a fuck it mode. That's to say that nothing matters and everything is pointless, that sort of mindset. I really wish I was better at articulating things. Depression for me is downward. Everything is downward, downhill, going down. Autistic burnout for me is a scramble. It's like a squiggly line above my head. It's like stagnancy. It's like I want to do the thing and I'm really frustrated. Why can't I do the thing? Almost like my car won't start. And in the video that this comment was left on, I talked about needing the entire day to power up my brain, to boot up my brain. When I'm depressed, the booting up never ever happens. When I'm depressed, every minute feels like an hour. When I'm in burnout, I can check the clock and it's 3:15 and I can look away and blink and look back and it's 5 o'clock. Being late discovered autistic has caused me to forgive myself for a lot of shit and make accommodations for myself that I've been needing for the past 3 decades. And I keep hearing over and over again from fellow autistic adults who are in burnout that it can take years to recover from, which does make sense because if you've been masking for decades and then all of a sudden you don't have to do that anymore, you're gonna need some time to recover and rebuild. I could talk about this all day, but I'm running out of time, but I want to hear from y'all. Is your depression and your burnout the same thing for you? Are they two different things? Why are they different? It is possible to experience both simultaneously. And no matter what, you're not alone. Are you me? Because after about a year, 10, 11 months of enduring chronic abuse from my then partner, I began to take it upon myself to do some research on why I'm feeling such severe, painful feelings inside. Feelings of inadequacy, feelings of despair, feelings of fear. And the fear alone was so intense. The fear of being alone, the fear of being left, being afraid to exist around this person. Because when you are being berated and belittled and laughed at and picked at for every part of your entire existence, then yeah, that's going to instill some heavy fear. So when I Googled these feelings of mine, the first thing that popped up was borderline personality disorder. This was 2018 when I still knew nothing about ADHD or autism. I didn't even really know about CPTSD either. And like in my heart of hearts, I knew that this relationship was detrimental to my health, but the other party in this relationship led me to believe that it was all my fault. So yeah, I took my findings to a psychiatrist and said, hey, I did some reading and stuff, and I don't know what borderline personality disorder is, but it's something that popped up in my results. And then he proceeded to read off a list of 9 items that are trademark BPD. I related to 3, maybe 4 of them at most, and he stamped BPD on my chart right then and there. So then I ordered a few books, I Hate You Don't Leave Me and a DBT workshop workbook, and I never opened them. I think I actually might have written 1 page in one, like filled out 1 work page, because hello, ADHD. But anyway, this person ended up leaving me for someone else in early 2020, and then I managed to get my life back and reestablish my identity and learn more about myself because I lived alone at the time as well. I was in therapy during that relationship, and I wasn't being fully upfront with my therapist about the extent of what I was experiencing during that time. But after that relationship ended, I went full disclosure and told her everything. And not only was she fucking floored, but also she had to point it out to me that that indeed was prolonged abuse of the physical, emotional, and verbal variety. Years have passed since then, and I've since learned of my CPTSD, autism, and ADHD. And I also learned that BPD is one of the most misdiagnosed and overdiagnosed personality disorders there is, that it's sort of like a band-aid and a stamp for people who are clearly dealing with something else. And while I still don't have a concrete opinion about BPD, I do know that those symptoms and those traits are real, but whether they're due to BPD or due to undiagnosed trauma, I don't know. For me personally, BPD was not the correct diagnosis. I'm not trying to take that away from anyone else.
Is a little bit of an elitist function of the capitalistic.
Please go watch that video. He talks about a lot of diagnosable conditions, but I specifically want to refer to autism and ADHD. I went undiagnosed for 29 years. I was diagnosed with ADHD at age 29, and then a few months later I realized, oh shit, I think I'm also autistic. And then I tried for months and months and months and months and months to get an evaluation from the same psychiatrist who diagnosed me with ADHD, and he absolutely refused, and I ended up going viral about that and ending up on Glamour UK. But that's another story for another time. So, and it's always the people who have no idea what goes into obtaining, oh my god. I'm sorry about that. It's fairly evident that I haven't taken my medicine yet. Anyway, the people who have no idea the hurdles and socioeconomic barriers and misogyny in the medical field that are in our way to obtaining a diagnosis, not to mention the fucking cost, which is roughly a kidney and your liver these days. Because of all these issues, self-diagnosis is perfectly valid and accepted within the autistic community. Hi, yes, quick question. When you're corresponding with someone via DM, which is more important to you? Receiving a quick response or receiving a well thought out response? Because for me, you're getting one or the other. That's why I have my read receipts turned off for everything that I possibly can have them turned off for. Because my DMs are pretty wild and wacky these days. They're just in a silly, goofy mood. And it's way much for me. So as far as time sensitivity with responding to messages, I'm gonna need a minute, a day, 3 days, a week, couple months. Who am I joking? I'll get to it when I get to it. And most people who know me know that already. But sometimes I do get pushback from people like, I guess you're just going to ignore me then? I guess my message just got lost in the shuffle. Yeah, bro, kind of both a little bit. Like, I don't have any notifications on for any of my social media because if I did, my phone would spontaneously combust. I've also been navigating some pretty top shelf primo burnout, so time is extra fake these days. And one of my icks is when people feel entitled to my time and my obligatory response because they sent me a message on this brick that lights up that I own, when essentially it's just pixels on a screen. And I promise, I'm not intending to sound harsh when I say this, but getting upset with a stranger for essentially not taking time out of their day for any reason, for no reason, it doesn't matter what the reason is, to respond to your message in a sea of other messages just like it, is a little cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, no? Please be for real. So that's my if I get to it. The other option that you get from me is if you send me a message while I'm in the app. That's the only way I can see it. If it pops up instantly, I will respond right away. And then I'll get off the app and I won't respond again for hours. And retrospectively, I understand why people might see that as wishy-washy or flaky, but that's just, it's just a little bit silly to me. Not in an invalidating way, but in a, it's not that deep way. So yeah, I'm not being malicious when I don't respond to messages or don't choose to open my DMs because I have to protect my peace. Especially as my socials continue to grow, it's just going to get crazier and crazier. If someone opens one of my messages and they don't respond for a few days, I truly don't think anything of it. Plus my Swiss cheese brain kind of lets me forget about things if I'm not looking at them. Can we please be a little more courteous with others' privacy and time and energy and sanity? That'd be great.
Fellow autistics, did you know that by tone, they meant just vibes and not the...
Fuck. I certainly was not aware of that. All it took was that TikTok and boom, hundreds of interactions from my life that had a big old question mark hovering above them suddenly explained. Bitch, if I had $1, as recently as yesterday, I've experienced tone policing because someone tried to take my first video down from yesterday, but it got restored. Because when women talk with assertive tone, woman mean. When man talk with assertive tone, must respect. Well, here's an outlandish request from the neurotypical and holistic communities. If it's my vibe that you don't like, please just say that. If it's my tone that you don't like, please just say that. Don't get me wrong, either way, you can take those opinions and shove them upward, but at least it'll be less confusing for me. TBH, if you don't like my vibe, then we won't vibe because I don't do the people-pleasing thing anymore. Yup. And I'm having a lot of simultaneous thoughts about this, so let me try to compartmentalize a little bit. First of all, check this out. My son Picasso did a number on me. And I'm not trying to overgeneralize here, but this is just what I've noticed. Parents like this of discovered and known autistic children will tell everyone that they are their child's voice because their child can't be their own voice. And that is so wrong. Being nonverbal or limited verbal doesn't mean that you don't have a voice, an inner voice, a thought process, a mind. And that's how I'm seeing a lot of autistic kids being treated by their parents on this app. And conversely, the parents of undiscovered autistic children who treat their children as miniature manipulators and perceive their expression of needs as a threat absolutely refuse to accept their child's autistic diagnosis later on in life when they find out as an adult. And gee, I wonder why that is. I know exactly why that is. Like I've said in other videos, people don't want to come to terms with the role that they played in someone else's suffering, especially if it's because of something that that person could not control. They do whatever they have to do to be able to sleep at night, and that includes alienating their own children. And I really hope that this parenting style tapers off with time. And this is coming from someone, a millennial who was raised by boomers, so I'm essentially Gen X light. And it sucks to have multiple realizations and epiphanies about your early years that essentially exonerate you from all of your perceived failings because they weren't failings. But the people around you made you feel like they were failings. Being punished for expressing your needs or opinions or having a tone that you're not aware of really sets the stage for primo codependent people pleasers. Not to be confused with the one-eyed, one-horned, flying purple people eater. It just reminded me of that. Anyway, yeah, it fucking sucks.
Western psychology is based on whether or not you act like a white man.
In that ill-fated appointment with my psychiatrist where he called me a narcissist twice for standing up for myself, he wouldn't let me get a word in edgewise as to why I thought that I was autistic and needed an assessment. I told him that he was basing his opinion based on how male I am. And then he hit me with the classic, I didn't say that. It sounds like you're making some assumptions. But motherfucker, I'm not. And I'll tell you why. And those who have seen my videos already know what I'm about to say. Women and minorities were not required to be included in clinical research until June 10th, 1993, when U.S. Congress passed the NIH Revitalization Act. And because of this, healthcare for women and healthcare for minorities is stunted by at least 3 decades. Until as recently as the 20th century, doctors thought that black people didn't feel as much pain as white people. I'm not making this shit up. You can go look for yourself. So yes, criteria in psychology is largely, if not entirely, based on how white and how male we appear. So many thoughts to unpack here, but first and foremost, brain reading versus eye reading is so fucking hilarious and accurate. And being hyperlexic from age 3 meant that I was a voracious reader throughout my childhood and up until high school. In high school, I still read, but not as much. And then when I started college, I sort of abandoned recreational reading altogether. Every time I was assigned a book to read for class, I did not do it. And I'm talking from like the 3rd grade on. The first book that I remember refusing to read was The Giver. And it just continued. Like all the classics that we were assigned through school, I did not want / could not bring myself to read the material. Like what I read in my free time had to be my choice, you know? And now I'm slowly trying to dip back into reading for fun, and it just takes me a fucking long ass time to read a book, and I never want to finish it because then it'll be over and I won't know what to do with my life. But there's something really important that I want to talk about this. I've heard it said from a few therapists that if you were a really active or voracious reader in your childhood, but then as an adult you kind of don't really read that much anymore, that one of the reasons for that could be that as a child you needed an escape, so you read to escape your reality. And when I first heard that, it absolutely floored me, because growing up undiscovered autistic and ADHD in the 90s and aughts was straight up not a good time. And when I became an adult, I didn't feel the need to like escape in books anymore so much. I found other ways to escape. But now any book that I want to bring myself to read has to be like nonfiction or informational, educational, because I can't get my mind to care about fiction anymore, which I think could be a testament to my need to escape in fiction and fantasy worlds as a kid. So I just thought that was a really interesting tidbit of information that really tied together a lot of loose ends for me. So this is me passing it on to whoever needs to hear it. And I want to know about your reading habits. Have you always been a voracious reader? Are you hyperlexic? When did you first learn to read? Do you still read to this day? What are some of your favorite genres? Like, I need to hear all about it right now. This is an outdated misconception that has long since been disproven. Poor parenting and home life can contribute to many conditions such as PTSD, CPTSD, codependency, people-pleasing. It can prime your nervous system to be comfortable in abusive and volatile situations. But no, poor parenting or home life do not cause autism or ADHD. It's highly genetic and neurodevelopmental in nature, and people with autism and ADHD are born with autism and ADHD. If you Google, is autism genetic, you're going to get a bunch of fucking bullshit from Autism Speaks, which is a literal hate group who promotes ABA therapy, which is essentially conversion therapy for autistic children. Autism is not an illness or a disease in need of a cure. There are no cures for neurotypes because it's something that's not curable, because it's not conditional. Now, I will say, because ADHD and autism are genetic and both highly stigmatized still and highly misunderstood, if the parent of that child doesn't know that they themselves are also neurodivergent, then that can contribute to some hostility within the home. Unknown neurodivergencies clash a lot. That was the case for myself in my home life. But no, to wrap it up, this is not true. Unequivocally, scientifically, false. Yes, thank you for asking, and I do have a lot of thoughts about this. I did some digging, like back in the summer, to see what I could find about any of this when all of those lawsuit commercials and ads kept popping up about, if your child has autism and you have taken Tylenol before, you may be entitled to compensate. What? So let me show you what I found first, and then I'll tell you my theory. If you Google, does Tylenol cause autism, this link from the Cleveland Clinic will be one of the first results that pops up. Why autism and ADHD are on the rise. Experts are struggling to understand why autism is one of the fastest growing developmental disorders in the U.S., affecting 1 in every 44 8-year-old children, which is a random ass age. The incidence of ADHD is also rising, affecting 9.4% of children ages 2 to 17. But here's the kicker from good old Dr. Z. So Dr. Zanotti, whoever the fuck that is, said that their true cause is poorly understood, but the kicker is he called them diseases. Hello? That was in the first couple of paragraphs of that page, and everything after that is null and void in my opinion, because autism is not a disease. ADHD is not a disease. So if you're ill-informed from the jump, I'm not going to fucking trust anything that you study or that you find in your findings. And that passage was giving everyone's autistic and ADHD these days. And all of these undiscovered neurodivergent people are learning about themselves and finding out about themselves. Studies like this are correlating that with a sudden uprise in the diseases out of nowhere. Like, this sounds absolutely ludicrous. We are born autistic. We are born with ADHD. That is the end of that. It is not caused by cigarettes. It is not caused by Tylenol. But I'll show you what else I found. I also found this article. You can pause to read that paragraph of a title. And this article refers to autism as ASC, Autism Spectrum Conditions. And here it says autistic children were more likely to be male. And further down it says ADHD children were also more likely to be male. Now TBH, that link is super jargony and it made my mind melt a little bit. And I'm not a fucking doctor or researcher, okay? So let me just put that out there from the jump. But the DSM-5 TR dropped in March 2022. And this study was from, I believe, May of 2021. And they used the DSM-4 to determine ADHD in these children. And the DSM-5 in and of itself is incomplete and problematic, and I'll discuss that in another video, but of course ADHD children and autistic children are more likely to be male. If you're using the DSM, I'm being a little hyperbolic here, but women's healthcare is still stuck in the fucking dark ages. Now I have about 20 seconds to put in my theory. Autism is genetic. 92% of autistic people who menstruate experience PMDD. Tylenol is the safest over-the-counter drug that you can take during pregnancy to alleviate symptoms. Due to susceptibility of hypersensitivity, autistic people probably need to take Tylenol more often. Correlation does not equal causation. Oh, this reminded me of something. My menstrual cycle has been on some fuck shit since I was 11 years old, so literally 20 years. It hit me hard and heavy every single month. For years and years and years, no one believed me when I told them about my symptoms. They said, well, you know, everybody deals with that, so it's normal, don't worry about it. I even had a male gyno tell me that the reason that my periods were so horrific was because my uterine wall was thick, and he essentially just said, good luck with that. Fast forward to my late 20s. I have tried nearly every birth control under the sun at this point, except for the IUD. So a little over a year ago, I went to the gyno and wanted to discuss my options for maybe receiving a hysterectomy, because I'm child-free by choice and I won't be changing my mind about that ever. And the intake nurse asked me if it was all right if a medical student came in and asked me my intro questions to give to the doctor, and I said sure. In walks a white dude with the name of his school on his scrubs, which is a Christian college. Dude had no idea what questions to ask me, but when he did ask me while I was there and I told him that I wanted to speak to the doctor about my options for a hysterectomy, he said, you don't want that. You might change your mind one day. And besides, your vagina will prolapse. Not might. Not there's a slight possibility that this might happen to you in the future. He used absolute terms. He said it will happen. I'm like, all right, Justin, what the fuck ever. I ended up getting a hormonal IUD in my next appointment and bled for 92 days, and it rendered my ADHD meds entirely useless. The gyno was super sweet to me when she, installed the IUD. But when I came back 3 months later to take it out, she was extremely cold to me and rude and didn't understand why. And when I told her that it was affecting my ADHD really badly, she was just like super dismissive. Like, bitch, I know you get a commission on this shit, but it's not my fault that I had an adverse reaction to this fucking thing, okay? I had it removed and I immediately felt relief, and my body was like pretty much back to normal within a few days. What's particularly infuriating about all of this is that eugenics are still being actively practiced in this field. The stories I've heard from Black and brown women who have gone in for a procedure and ended up being sterilized against their will, against their knowledge, against their consent. What the fuck is going on? Nothing good, I'll tell you that much. Yes, I would like to vote to burn it all down, please. Oof, that is fucked up, and I'm sorry, but it does matter. If you're autistic, it does matter. You deserve to know that information if it's true about yourself. You deserve to have your charts reflected accurately if that's what you desire. And most importantly, having the correct knowledge under your belt allows you to ask for and receive accommodations. Growing up undiscovered autistic and or ADHD is an almost guarantee that you will experience some form of complex trauma just by existing in a world that's not built for you, and being dismissed by people and being told that your problems are normal, or that everyone feels that way, or that you're too dramatic or too sensitive. That shit accumulates and that shit builds up over time. And when we inevitably work ourselves into an autistic burnout, we come to sort of a fork in the road where we have to discover for ourselves what is going on inside. And to be diagnosed autistic on paper could also lead to a whole other slew of problems. Being denied access to other places, being denied work, being discriminated against, being denied bodily autonomy in the event of a life-threatening emergency. The list goes on and on and on. One of my cats took a Mondo Dookie in the next room and I had to clean the litter box. Anyway, where was I? Oh, yes. It's because of the reasons that I just listed that self-diagnosis within the autistic community is perfectly valid and accepted. And even if your charts don't reflect that diagnosis, it doesn't mean that you still can't afford yourself the accommodations. Because if you know that you're autistic and you have done the work and the research and you've listened to other autistic people and you identify with their experiences and you've self-assessed and retrospectively looked back at your life, and if autism is the thing that makes everything click into place for you, if that explains all of these open-ended questions during the entirety of your existence, then yeah, there's a pretty good chance that you may be autistic. So whether that's reflected on paper or not doesn't take away from the fact that you deserve to have support and community and love and guidance. Working through trauma therapy has helped me with this retroactive realization. So when your therapist said that the treatments are the same, they weren't entirely incorrect, but I just have icks with the word treatment when it's referring to autism. But at any rate, I hope you're able to find a healthcare provider who actually understands you and sees you and takes you seriously, because we all deserve that. This is I'm a little bit boldered right now, part 2. Question for overthinkers and over-explainers who are trying to do better about both, but it's really fucking hard. Do you also find it infuriating when you make it a point to always clarify things that you mean to avoid misunderstandings, right? But the one time that you decide to just say something that would be taken at face value from anyone else, were my eyes closed just then? Fuck it, I'm keeping it in. But that's always the time when someone points out the very thing that you would have clarified if you were doing your normal over-explaining thing, but this one time you decided to live by the edge of your seat and not explain every fucking thing, and then they say the exact thing that you wanted to say about the thing.
Dan has ever gone into a doctor's office and been told, You're being a little bit too strict.
That is a chef's kiss of a video. Please go watch it. And my heart goes out to that creator. She went to a doctor's appointment, and her doctor, who was a woman, at the end of the appointment told her, just a little tip, you might want to try being a little less straightforward when you visit a doctor, because just coming in here and telling people that you need help and this is what I have and this is what I need, it's a little too direct. What in the power trip and internalized misogyny is that? While I think there are plenty of healthcare professionals who enter the field with the best intentions, wanting to help people, a portion of them are egotistical and power hungry and want to play detective with your health and want to solve the mystery and get it right and not be told, hey, here's what I've found so far. Let me bring you the information that I've gathered independently in my own life, and then we can, figure this out together. They don't want that. They don't want you to be involved in your diagnostic process. They want you to show up to them and beg. Be like, please, I don't know what's wrong with me and only you can save me. Man, fuck that shit. Plenty of time. Picky. Could you suck your ass any louder, my dude? You know what? Let me modify my thought just then. Because not all of them want you to beg. Some of them just want you to be like, hey, how you doing? Good. You? Good. You feeling all right? Yeah, feeling all right. Okay, good. See you next time. They don't want you to bring them any problems, which is fucking weird if your actual job description is to diagnose and treat people. Dude, no one gets tone policed more than women and minorities. And minority women get it the most. As an autistic woman myself, I have been through the fucking ringer with these doctors, bro. Some of their egos are so fragile that I've come to them with context from my childhood to be like, okay, here's why I think that this is happening now, because from my childhood. And they will just look at me like, you like to talk about yourself a lot, don't you? Sir or ma'am, is this not my doctor appointment that I am paying for with my money? Doctors are not saviors. Doctors are not infallible. And I think some of them need to be reminded of that. And the video I stitched, my experiences that I've heard from so many other autistic people are exactly why we need more autistic healthcare providers. I don't mean people who have learned about autism and specialize in reading about it. I mean people who fucking live it. Because if you are not autistic, it is impossible for an autistic person to get you to understand the full extent of what it means to be autistic and to exist in an autistic mind. 3 minutes is never enough. Much love to you, because it is so unbelievably difficult for so many reasons and for no reason at all. A majority of the time, you're going to need to have about $2,000 lying around, and then that becomes a gamble of, okay, well, am I just going to get gaslit or not? Again, and be out 2K this time. The inevitable infantilization that would take place because of people's gross misunderstandings of autism, what it actually is, and how it manifests differently in different people, because it truly exists on the spectrum. Workplace discrimination that they'll claim isn't happening because that's illegal, but it happens all the fucking time. And I didn't know this until recently, but the whole country's not letting you have a visa there because you're autistic, or not letting you move there because you're autistic. That is very much a thing. And I need to look more into that, but if y'all know, off the top of your head, what countries practice this, please drop a comment, because I'm truly curious. Please don't get me wrong, discovering my autism at 29 or 30 has allowed me to forgive myself for a lifetime of failings that aren't actually even failings. And there is such pure jubilance and joy that exists when I'm able to be my truest self. And my corner of this dumpster fire of a planet is so peaceful. But getting to that point is the furthest thing from an overnight process, and it is still in progress for me. Because discovering that intangible thing that you knew was different about you your whole life but didn't have a name for it is gonna come with some grief. Sound as if I wasn't a crab without a shell in the fetal position for 3 months and weeping every single day. But for me, that grief has been cyclical and in swift rotation, and it's like I'll have a random thought at 2:30 in the afternoon unrelated to what I'm doing, and I'll go, damn, that's what that was? This whole time it was just autism? So yeah, that whole reprocessing your entire life through your autistic lens thing is not fun. But also, it's kind of awesome. Like, all of these lifelong mysteries that you've had, hundreds of them become solved with this realization. But then you have the secondary realizations. Oh, damn, that's why they treated me like that. That's why that happened. That's what that was. It's just so much. It's three much. That was a tangent. Reeling it. Oh my God. I'm a mess. Why do y'all follow me? Okay. All of that shit to say, sometimes having a tangible diagnosis on paper does more harm than good. Which is why if you've got weeks and months of research and peer reviews and discussions with autistic people under your belt and you relate to their experiences and this solves lifelong questions that you didn't even know that you had, then it's perfectly valid to live your life authentically and comfortably as long as it's in your truth.